Welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Reed Stone. Alongside me is my co host, Bob Foley. And our guest for this episode is George Jerjian. George is an author, speaker, and mindset mentor serving his tribe, retiring baby boomers by helping them discover that in the afternoon of their lives, they deserve to live a life of purpose and passion and to go out with a bang, not a whimper. His mission is inspiring his tribe to transform themselves by reaching out for a new and worthy goal in the next chapter of their lives. George's innovative and pioneering program, the DARE Method, has helped clients the world over, and his latest book, Dare to Discover Your Purpose, is an international bestseller. Through them, he challenges boomers to rebel against conventional approaches to retirement, reset their subconscious mind, and remove obstacles which stand in the way of the life they want to live. George's illustrious career spans over 40 years in several fields, including marketing, journalism, real estate, and as a financial advisor. George, welcome. Bob and I are excited to dive into this topic with you.
Thank you, Reed. Thank you, Bob. Delighted to be on your show.
So let's jump in, and I first want to start, George, with a little bit of your background and about your transition into retirement. As I recall reading about your transition, it was not a smooth one by any means. So tell us about the transition into retirement, and then maybe how that led you to become involved in helping people plan for their life in retirement.
Right. In a nutshell, it was in 2007, I was diagnosed with a bone tumor and given 6 months to live. And that changes your mindset pretty much from the get-go. You don't have time to adjust to that. You know, you're hit with a baseball bat across your head, and you recognize that all the things that you thought were important suddenly are not as important as you thought they were. And some of the things that you hadn't even considered become paramount, which is time. My focus in my first part of my life, as it were, up to 2007, was money. You know, how do you get money on the table? How do you create achievement, success, progress? And you're completely blinded to the fact that life is ephemeral. We go to funerals, you know, where we feel sorry for the people who've passed, but actually we're really feeling sorry for ourselves, and we don't consider death as to be in the forefront of our minds as it should be if we want to really engage with living. I think it's Benedictine monks were always encouraged, you know, for 1,500 years, they were encouraged to have death as sort of top of mind, because only in that way could you engage in life to the maximum. So we shouldn't be afraid of death. We should actually make it a friend. So death was really, for me, a wake-up call. What I call my rendezvous with death was my wake-up call to recognize what's really important in life. And it's the people you love, the things you love to do, and recognize that your life has to have some meaning. And so I started reading all sorts of books. You know, I'm thinking of Frankel's book about, you know, his time in Auschwitz and how he managed to stay above the whole fray by having a purpose in his life. He lost his wife, he lost his kids. They even took his manuscript away from him. And he didn't allow any of those things to take away the meaning of his life. And so by reading about people who've been on this journey before us, I garnered, if you like, the wherewithal to overcome that. I was lucky in that in 98% of cases with bone tumor, it's secondary cancer and it means it's spread throughout your body. I happen to belong to the 2% club. So I was lucky.
Wow.
And in a sense, yeah. And in a sense, I look back at my life and I recognize that I've been living on bonus time since 2007. I make each day a new lifetime. And that's how you extract the maximum wealth from each day. So finance is hugely important, but we can't be blinded to the fact that our lives are more important. So to answer your question, Reed, my life, if you like, took a whole different turn on the back of that diagnosis. And so I started living my life differently. But change is a slow thing. You can't demand change and push things and cut things out immediately because you've invested so much time and effort in getting to where you are that the descent is possibly harder. I think it was a Mexican poet who said, we spend all our lives building bricks around us, a wall, and we spend the second part of our lives taking those bricks down one by one. It's almost like, why did I bother doing it? Because I didn't know. And so I went on, and then in 2012, I went on a journey to Israel. I went to the Holy Land to see for myself what I could understand from the faith that I was brought up in. Be brought up a Catholic, so Christianity. I was looking for answers. And I love history. So it was a great convergence of history, scripture, and really my own advancement in my thinking. And from there, I ended up in 2015, 2016, I went on a 30-day silent retreat. And I was going through some challenges and difficulties, and I really wanted to get out of even this rat race that I was in post the 2007 episode, because life doesn't stop. You get sucked into whole new things again. And I had to stop there and say, no, I need to recalibrate. And my 30-day silent retreat in North Wales was incredible, because I love talking, and going into silence is not easy. It's very painful. And for me, the first 3 days was hell, pure hell. But as soon as I settled in, all the noise, because you had no Wi-Fi, no newspapers, no magazines, no books. Everything was out. You only had 15 minutes conversation, 30-minute conversation each day with your spiritual director. And in that 30 minutes, you had 15 minutes to go over yesterday's events in your life. What were you thinking? What were you going through? And then instructions on how to do the next 24 hours. So for me, it was about going into an inventure, as I call it. Right, the answers to our challenges and what we desire and what we want in life and the meaning of our lives are not achieved by going outside. The answers do not lie outside, they lie within us. And none of us spend time going in. We don't recognize that there is a universe within the atom. And we ignore that. We're always exploring on the outside, which is great and wonderful. We should do that, but we should spend an equal amount of time going in. And for me, those 30 days got me connected to my vulnerable self, the self that I don't like to show other people, because that's the self that's weak. That's the self that I'm embarrassed about. That's the self that I've laid hidden for years, probably from school days, and I had to bring that vulnerable self out into the open. And one of the things that I got out of that 30 days was when I looked in the mirror, I wanted to see a different person. And during those 30 days, I'd grown a beard. I looked like Moses coming down from the mountain. And and I obviously trimmed my beard and left it as a reminder of this is the new me. This is the real me, the authentic me, not the one that I used to portray to the world outside, which we all do. You know, we have, I think psychologists tell us that we have many personalities, up to 30 personalities, or personas rather, not personalities, which are really, personas is a Greek word meaning masks. These are the masks we put on to our faces to communicate with different types of people, family members, spouse, partners, um, old friends, new friends, in business. You know, we've chiseled the best part of us for the business to look the perfect fit. But post-retirement, it's time to get to know who you really are, not the one that you've been portraying for all these decades. And you don't want to be doing this or thinking about this on your deathbed. So that's how I was able to begin my new transformation. So it took from, I would say it took I'm a slow learner. Let me put it out there right now. I'm a slow learner. So 2007 is when this diagnosis happened, my wake-up call. It took me, I'd say another 9 years before I started thinking about how do I transform my life? Because I went into retirement in 2007. I was 52. I took early retirement because I thought this is it. I've got to, you know, and then retirement didn't turn out what I thought it was going to be. In fact, I got to tell you, after the honeymoon period of retirement, I was miserable as a dog. Miserable because I was waiting on friends the whole time. So I wasn't engaged. I was waiting for others. And I was very unhappy in that situation. And it was the unhappiness that drove me. I would say not courage, unhappiness drove me to find another way. So that 30-day retreat led me to changing mindsets. And that's when I approached Bob Proctor, the success coach in Canada, the late Bob Proctor, who actually wrote the foreword to my book. And I think I was the last book that he made a foreword for before he passed away. And I worked with him for 18 months. I learned about how to change one's mindset. And people come into this retirement arena from different avenues. I mean, think of retirement as an elephant. Everybody's touching the elephant in a different place and thinking this is it, this is the whole elephant, and it's not. But I think a pivotal place to kick off in post-retirement is changing your mindset, because if you change your mindset, everything else changes. Everything else is easier to deal with because having a new mindset gives you a new perspective.
Do you
So,
find
so
that
that's how I changed.
do you find that your mindset changes though over time?
Well, it does anyway, yes. But I think that one of the things is that understanding how our mind works, and most of us don't know how our mind works. We think we're thinking, but we're not. I think it was Henry Ford, who I quote quite regularly, although I don't know why, because he has the right words for expressing the situation. Is he says, thinking is the hardest thing to do. That's why so few people engage in it. And because we think that thinking is a cerebral, is a mental exercise, whereas it's actually not. There is the thinking mind and there's the emotional mind. The thinking mind is what we do, right? We're always thinking. But the emotional mind is the subconscious. And we think we're thinking, but we've already made a decision and we move with that. What we don't recognize is that the subconscious mind, the emotional mind, is what's the driver. The emotional mind has been programmed for us by our parents, our educational system, our work environment, and we are on automatic pilot. So when it comes to retirement, we literally sleepwalk into retirement. We're not really thinking about what's actually going here. What are we facing as we go into retirement? What are the challenges? No one thinks about that until they're deep, knee deep in the quicksand of retirement. So what is it that needs to change is how we perceive how our own mind works. And when we recognize that, just to give you an example, a New Year's resolution, right? We make it in January or December, we make a resolution, we start it within 2-3 weeks, it's dead. It's dead because the subconscious mind has a thermostat. If anything goes above or below that, it will eliminate it. Willpower cannot beat the subconscious mind. But how often have we been taught with willpower, we can do anything? Yes, we can, but if we don't have the subconscious mind on side, if we haven't tampered with the thermostats of the subconscious mind, we will fail. So a lot of programs in our minds are very powerful and very necessary. Eating, sleeping, digesting, all that stuff. Even driving. When we drive from A to B and we're thinking about the facts, remember, the fax, the telex, the email, whatever it is that you're going to be sending, you're thinking about the next thing that you're going to be doing while you're driving. So actually, your subconscious mind has taken over. It knows the route, or if it doesn't know the route, it's already programmed on your system and it's driving while your conscious mind is thinking about the future of what you're going to be doing. That's a perfect example of a programming that actually works really well. If the subconscious mind was not there to help us, we'd have to learn to walk again every single day. So, but there are some programs that are now sabotaging us. Those are the programs that need to change. And it can't be changed the way we think it can be changed, because it's an emotional program. And I'm just trying to think of, I lost my thread there. Never mind. We'll come to it, no doubt. So back to you, Reed. Sorry. So back to you, Bob. You were asking a question about
Yes, mindset and you know, the metamorphosis of all of that, and you know how and what are the is it the aging process that changes it? Is there environment that changes it? Is it you know, your social circles that change it? What did you find?
I find everything changes, and I think the struggle is that it's like 4 or 5 things coming together and changing at the same time. That's overwhelming. And in a sense, we're in a different landscape and we're still using an old map. Just imagine on the physical thing, you're wearing a suit and tie, but the landscape is a desert now. You need shorts, you need a t-shirt, you need water, you need a whole different set of things to be able to navigate this new terrain. Retirement is not like working life. The space is very different and our mindset is linear. We're literally traversing this thing in a linear fashion. What we actually need to be doing is thinking quantum. We're taking a quantum leap, and that's a step too far for most retirees because the money spigot is now switched off. The sandbox is getting smaller. We're canceling subscriptions, canceling things that are not necessary. But hey, wait, guys, we don't have just another 2 to 5 years to go. We have another 25 to go. This is not a time to stop and become less. And so how do you do that? You can't use the same programming that got you through your working life for this next chapter. I think it was Max Planck, the quantum physicist, who said, If you change the way you look at something, what you look at changes. If you change the way you look at something, what you look at changes. So if you change the way you look at this chapter of your life, everything that you do is going to change. In my case, I have more energy today than I had 10 years ago, because I have decluttered the life I had in order to make room for the new life that I want to live. Now, people's immediate reaction is, this is a bridge too far. I mean, conceptually, it sounds terrific. I love it. But you know what? I'm too invested in the way I live and how I live. And I go, hey, you're absolutely right. But you don't want to be asking the questions that I'm asking on your deathbed. Everything you own has a great deal of meaning for you, because there's what I call an emotional molecule attached to it. What we need to do is decouple that emotional molecule from the things that we own around us that are no longer serving us. They are an impediment to our next stage, as it were. So decluttering is a huge component here. We've got to take down all those trophies. That life is gone. Who we are is gone. And you can't meet your new self, your higher self, if you don't get rid of the old self that is no longer really true. So, for example, you ask people when they're retired, you know, what do you do? They go, I'm a retired lawyer, or a retired janitor, or a retired CEO. No, you're not. You're retired, but you're not a CEO, you're not a lawyer, and you're not a janitor anymore. So who are you? And that's the critical question. Because one of the things I discovered in my research of, I think it was, I did a survey. I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun here, Reed, but because the conversation's flowing from one thing to the other. I'm sorry.
No,
Maybe I should.
that was actually my next question, was to get into some of your research. So
Okay, sorry about that.
talk a little bit about the research study that you did, because I think that was probably part of your own kind of
Yes.
introspection during that time, seeing what other people were thinking, how other people had approached retirement. So talk about the study that you did. And I think one of the questions you asked was, what is your biggest challenge in retirement? So I'm curious what the responses were that you received. And then as a follow-up question, George, is what do these responses tell us from your study, and particularly for people who are yet to retire? So what did the survey respondents tell you, and then what can people approaching retirement take from what you found in the study and through your own experience? Because I'm guessing the study that you did kind of dovetailed what you were finding as you were going through your retirement transition.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's a huge question. I hope I don't get diverted. Let me keep it focused. Yeah. So I did a study because I try not to rely just on my own experience. I wanted to know what others were thinking. And, you know, was I on the same path, or were they on the same path as me? And so what I did was, it was back in 2020, I created a 9-question survey, which I couched as a quiz, because I know people hate surveys, but they love doing quizzes. So I couched it as a quiz, and I launched it on Facebook, and I targeted people aged 55 to 75, living in North America, that's USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. So these 5 English-speaking countries. I thought, let me just see what people aged between 55 and 75, male and female, what do they think about retirement? So I had some demographic questions and some psychographic questions. But one of the pivotal questions that I had in there was, what is your single biggest challenge in retirement? And this was during the pandemic, remember? And still, I mean, I was shocked by the response because I was not expecting that to be the answer. 50% said health. Now, we're in the pandemic here, so understandably, people are very nervous about their health. 35% said fear of outliving their savings. And 15% said lack of purpose, aimlessness was their biggest fear. So that's one question. 2 questions later, I tweaked that question along the lines of, if you had a magic wand, which one would you address first? 50% said health again. It's quite shocking how health was like embedded as the rock here, as the biggest challenge in retirement. But here's the thing. Now people are given agency. 36% said finding a new purpose. And 14% or something like that were worried about money. So give people agency and they know what they want to do. So I was really happy with my findings. And I thought, this is great because 35,000 people came in and answered question 1. And 23,000 answered question 9. So obviously I have to forget the 35,000 because they stopped at 1 and fell off. And again, it was still a good gradient down to 23,000 answering question 9. So I had 23,000 people who had answered 9 questions. Great database, great information, and from the right people, aged between 55 and 75, and across 5 English-speaking countries. So I thought that was really good. But I had this nagging feeling that I was missing something here, and I didn't know what it was. I'd asked people what they wanted. They told me. Why am I not satisfied with these answers? Until I came across a quote, and again, I said Henry Ford comes in frequently here. Henry Ford said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And that was my aha moment. That was my epiphany, that that's what was missing. People told me what they were thinking. That was all correct. Marketing-wise, I've done my job. But what was missing was people don't know what they don't know. And without sounding arrogant, I had to go back to the drawing board because I couldn't trust what people had told me because they don't know what they don't know. Went back to the drawing board. What is the first casualty in retirement? And as I delved into this, I realized how important the idea of the answer to this question would be. Just like we know in war, the first casualty is the truth. Because whoever controls the information controls the war. Truth is, one's truth is not necessarily the truth. So propaganda is hugely important in wartime, and truth is the first casualty. In retirement, the first casualty that people are completely unaware of is our identity. Who are we now? Hence, the need to maintain those trophies and those things that we've done well in life. But that life is gone. It's history. It's water under the bridge. Who am I now? And we hang on to our past identity for dear life. But that identity has gone. We're swimming in the aftermath of that persona. And we're fearful of venturing forth into a new identity. Now, we're a little bit like ships, right? Ships are not built to stay in harbor. Ships are built to plow the oceans for trade and exchange of goods. And in a sense, when the ship leaves the comfort of the harbor, it's out in the elements. It's a scary place to be. Storms can break the ship. You can drown. Or you can be stuck in the doldrums for weeks and months, going nowhere. These are painful places for humans to consider. So, but the point is that we come to retirement and we just want to stay in harbor. We weren't built to stay in harbor. Our time on this planet is limited. And by trying to stay in harbor, we think we're kind of gaining time, but we're not. We're dying. And life isn't meant, I think it was Einstein who said that if you want answers to your problems, look in nature. So I looked in nature to see if anything retired. Nothing retires in nature. It's either dying or growing. Those are the two choices. And so you realize that actually you have to have courage to move forward when everything in you is pushing you to stay where you are in your comfort zone. And in the consumer society that we live in, this has kind of made things even harder for us because we have insurance to think about. We've got, fear is so deeply ingrained that we need to cover ourselves for this eventuality, for that eventuality, for every eventuality in life, to the point where you can't live anymore. We're trapped in the prison of our own making. Well, I wouldn't blame ourselves all for that, but it's our society, as it were. We've created a prison where we can't come out of. And as boomers, we've changed everything in life as we've gone through. And this is the last hurdle we have to change. That's why I call it retirement rebellion, because you have to fight against this. Even Cicero said, old age is the crown of life, our life's last act. And we have to rail. The poet Dylan, I think it was Dylan Thomas, I can't remember who was it, Yeats said, we have to rage against the dying of the light. You can't sit back and think you're going to be okay. You're not going to be okay. If you don't engage in new activities, if you don't engage in meaningful activities at this stage in your life, this is going to go. Your cognitive, if you're not, we're social animals, we need to be connected with other people. And I don't mean doing a round of golf. I'm talking about being engaged in a community of work or engagement or something that keeps you not just mentally engaged, but socially engaged. That gives you a meaning and purpose in your life and joy. And so, this is, to come back to your question, Reed, what did I learn from this is I needed to create a new identity for myself in order to make my next move. What is it I wanted to do? And I think I didn't find my purpose. I think my purpose found me. And I think it's because I started walking in the direction of something new, something meaningful. And life comes to you. But if you don't take those steps, if you stay at home on your sofa, it's not going to come. And so I created my program, the DARE method. I couldn't reach out to hundreds of people. So I started doing one client at a time, created testimonials. I was, and the more I taught this, the better I got at it. I wasn't particularly agile and adept on Zoom calls, on conversations. I was on physical, when I'm physically connected with people, But online, it wasn't so easy to discuss. I'm a Toastmaster, so public speaking is not a difficult thing because I've trained to do that. But the medium is a different medium on Zoom calls and on digital media, and also to teach on digital media. But the more I did, the better I got. And then you get self-confidence you get your confidence improves. And so whatever it is that you choose to do something you love to do and move forward in the direction, and life will come to you and meet you halfway. But you need to make that move. You need to make that change. But there are 1,001 things that will stop you. You just have to knock them off. They're just there. And the more you do it, the more confidence will come to you, and you will start living a life of purpose.
So George, you've talked about mindset and identity and purpose, and I'm guessing there's a connection on how people can help figure out those things for themselves in retirement in your book. So describe what the DARE method is. What does the DARE stand for, and how does that help people with a mindset change, with identifying, coming up with a new identity, finding new purpose? How does that come through in your book and through your DARE acronym?
Right. Okay. The DARE acronym came about. I'd already kind of worked the program, and I was speaking with my marketing people, and one of the young ladies came up with the DARE. She literally saw what I couldn't see. She said, we can call this DARE. And I go, why would we do that? She said, well, you've got, the first part of your first quarter of your course is about discovering about retirement, what it is and what it's not. So we'll call that Discover. The second part is assimilate new information about how our mind works. So A is for assimilating this new information. R is for rewiring how our mind is working. And one of the reasons is that, as I said, we think we're making decisions, but actually our mind is already made up. We then find the logical reasons to justify it, as opposed to doing it the other way around. Rewiring is when, you have that inner voice in you saying, I'm too old to do this. I'm not good enough. I can't, I don't know if I can do this. And so that's the inner dialogue. That's the inner dialogue that needs to be re-recorded over. We remember the days of tape recorders where you could record over the old conversation, right? That's essentially what you do with your mind, because your inner dialogue is saying one thing, which is not resonating with what you consciously are trying to do. So there's a dissonance here. And where there's dissonance, nothing will move forward. So you learn how to engage that conversation by re-engineering that conversation in your head, replacing it. So that's what rewire is. And lastly, E is for expand. Now, expand your consciousness or your perception of what is actually available to you. So as I mentioned earlier, Max Planck said, if you change the way you look at something, what you look at changes. That's how, if you just imagine you're looking at a mountain and all you can see is the mountain. If you move and walk 100 yards to the right, you might be able to see a village right behind the mountain, which you couldn't see where you were standing earlier. So imagine you change your mindset and suddenly you see opportunities that you could not see before because you weren't in the right state of mind to see that. It was always there. It's like, for example, I was on a safari, which I will talk about later. I was on a safari recently, and I was on a truck with a guide and a tracker, and we were going into the park, in the national park, and the guide saw a lion, and I'm saying I couldn't see it. he said to me, it's right there behind that left tree. And I go, I still can't see it. So he drove the car in a different direction to show me. And I go, oh my God, I can see it now. But the tracker and him could see it. I couldn't. Their neurons and synapses are wired to see things in nature. Nature has lots of secrets. And we, in our civilizational mind, see things differently because our mind is, you know, we're working on computer screens. We're working on, you know, our mind is thinking about very different things. So it's wired very differently. But the universe is much bigger than our mind's cavern can see. So the natives could see the thing. I couldn't. Because their mind is, if you like, programmed differently. And so what that tells me is that there's a lot of stuff out there that we cannot see. So how do we open the eyes of our minds to be able to see that? You have to have a beginner's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But we are taught as we age, we become so wise now with the knowledge and experience that we have, that we're unable to have a beginner's mind to see things differently, which means it's our loss because we're now trapped in our own ego, our own existence, and we can't see beyond that. So DARE is the methodology of, you know, and there are exercises, 2 exercises, because there's 8 modules to the DARE program. There's 2 modules for each letter. And it goes, you go through these exercises, you end up with a 1-page document, which is kind of like your new manifesto of moving forward. But DARE is also it's not just an acronym. It's a synonym for courage. And courage is the etymology of courage is comes from the Latin cor, C-O-R, meaning heart. So courage is not an intellectual thing. It's an emotional issue. It's an emotional intelligence, not a thinking intelligence. And the emotional intelligence, again, comes to the heart. What are you passionate about? When you're passionate about something, you drive it through. The intellect supports it. And it was Einstein himself who said, the intuitive mind, that's the heart mind, is the master. And the rational mind is its servant. But we live in a society that worships the rational and ignores the intuitive. And so the DARE program is about us going into an inventure as opposed to an adventure, although both are connected in a sense. In medieval times, people went on pilgrimages, which was a walking pilgrimage. For example, the El Camino in Spain. It's a pilgrimage of people going on a journey, a physical adventure, but what's actually transforming is internal. And so it's courage that's needed to make this transition, right? We all have choices. We can stay where we are and be stuck and let things unfold the way it's supposed to if you get stuck. You know, in a sense, staying in retirement, in my view, it's a little harsh, but it's true, is you're choosing death. Because your old identity is dying. It's dead. And you are refusing to embark on a new journey. You're refusing to embark on this new challenge that life is giving you before the lights go out, which it will for all of us. So wouldn't you want to choose a new adventure? That's what life is about. It's about a new adventure. And I know there's 1,000 things that's going to try and stop you from doing this. But you almost have to be the hero. You're the scriptwriter of your own story. And so it does take courage to make this move. But your future self will thank you for taking this step.
George, I wanted to cover one last topic today with you. And I know you wrote a couple I'll share a couple of your quotes and then ask you a question. So you made a point in one of the, I think it was one of the CNBC articles you wrote where you said, people often confuse retirement savings with retirement planning. And then in your book, you talk about the main cause of why the retirement formula is broken. So I wanted to get your thoughts on why you think the qualitative side of retirement planning is so often overlooked. It's overlooked by people approaching retirement. I believe it's overlooked in the retirement planning industry by uh, financial advisors and financial services organizations. I think it's overlooked by corporate America when they're helping people plan for their retirement. So why do you think the qualitative side is so often overlooked by almost universally overlooked for the most part? And like you said, until somebody gets into it and runs into these, they get stuck, like you said, and I've used that term too. People get stuck.
Yeah. I think really it's money driven. I think the financial services industry, life insurance, pensions, it's always been money based. That's been the motive, that's been the profit motive, and that's been how this whole thing has grown. But what was missing was, if you like, and I hear this even from actuaries, people in the pensions industry, who are themselves recognizing that this thing is broken, it's not working. And I know a few who've embarked on startups to help this. The financial services industry is, at the moment, I mean, just look at the stock market gyrations. They're stuck in this trap of putting out fires, trying to justify and try to help clients understand why the valuations are not so good. They're trapped in this self-negating loop. The solution is you've got to offer your clients something about their lives now. You've looked after their money, you've looked after their funds. Though that's having, there's tremors and tribulations going on in the financial sector industry because that's just the way it's happening. But the way to overcome this for financial institutions is, how can you help your clients use the savings they have in a productive way that's going to give them joy and give them a new lease on their life? And that's to help them on creating a new dynamic in their lives post-retirement, because it's patently clear that the vast majority of people will outlive their savings. And so we all know the road is ending somewhere along, within a few hundred miles. Why don't we just stop and think, where are we going with this? And I think the financial institution that takes the lead in helping their retiring clients find a new lease of life is going to capture a vast, it's going to be the Amazon, if you like, of this sector. Yeah. Because they're going to recognize, my goodness, we need to invest in this. And it's going to be a huge money earner for them, because they're going to be able to charge a nice hefty chunk of money to help people find a new lease on their lives. And if they invest time and money in this sector to bring in retirement coaches, to train them, to create a program, it's going to be a new income stream for them, and it's going to make them the leader in that sector. And it won't take long before the competitors are going to start following suit. But yeah, the first mover advantage is there. They will be the Hertz, if you like, in that sector. And I think the reason this has taken such a long time is because it's been individuals who've come out and said, here we are, we're a retirement coach, we're doing this. But even in the retirement coaching industry, it's it's in its infancy.
Yeah.
And so people are doing different things, better than not doing anything at all, but we don't have a mass yet. And it's also very difficult for individuals to become big, and most of them don't want to,
Yeah.
because they're in their part of life where they're not looking to conquer the world anymore. They're just looking to make a good living and to help people. And so the organization, whether it's financial services or a corporate or even a travel agent, a large travel agency, because education and travel go hand in hand, I discovered. So it's an organization that is going to invest in creating training coaches and training program and training retirees how to invest and create a new life for themselves going forward is going to be the winning formula. And that's what I'm trying to do to help bring this about.
Yep.
But I'm a young guy.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we're all trying to do, George, is to figure out how we can make this whole planning for life and retirement more commonplace and more acceptable. And so one last question, George, before we go today, is there anything else that there's like 15 more things that Bob and I could ask you about today, but we're out of time today. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we end today?
Yeah, I would just say on a sort of parting note, to retirees listening to this program, I would say, think about taking a gap year. Most of us were sort of encouraged to take a gap year when we were adolescents before we went into the workforce. But I think you need a gap year when you are now coming out of the workforce, and what are you going to do next in your life? Everything has been formulated in this little area of work that you've been involved in most of your life. You don't know what's out there. You've no idea what you really, really want, because we've kind of been lying to ourselves for so long to stick to the path that we've been on, that we've forgotten what we really love and enjoy doing. And if you take a gap year, which doesn't mean 12 months necessarily, right? It could be 2-3 months. You need to be out of the area that you live in, ideally a different country, a different culture, to see things from a different perspective. Try out things that you've never done before, because you have no idea what that will do for you. So, for example, I looked at myself and said, I didn't take a gap year. How can I be telling people to take a gap year? I need to walk in my shoes, right? I need to talk my talk. I need to walk my talk. So last year, I mean, this has been brewing for about a year and a bit. I took a trip around the world in 80 days. I did it, started in March, finished in June. And the reason I did that is because I loved that book, Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. And I said to myself, I want to do this. But my inner dialogue was, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. You don't really, you can't do this. This is childish. I had to shut this talk, that inner dialogue that was stopping me. And I can share this with you. I was looking at how much this trip was going to cost, right? So there I am looking for prices and things. The more I got involved, I found an energy coming within me. I was getting excited. I hadn't been excited like this for a long time. I got excited about it. The more I delved into it, the more I realized I can't do this on my own. I've been doing all my travel trips online by myself for the last 20 years. I decided to take on board a travel agency that had people on the ground who knew the lay of the land, who knew what the sort of things that I wanted to do. And so I had a 90-minute conversation with, let me backtrack. I decided to go around the world in 80 days. I chose 5 countries I'd never been to before. Wanted something new. And so I chose South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Canada. And the way 80 days works is I would spend 2 weeks in each country, and I would spend 3 weeks in Japan because that's completely different. And so I organized it with this travel agency, which had country experts. And so I spent 90 minutes with each country expert. I said, I've got 2 weeks. What can I do in South Africa in 2 weeks? So they said, not a lot. You need a year in South Africa to get to see it. I said, I've only got 2 weeks. So what do I do? They said, less is more. I go, okay, fine. So we reduced things. I wanted to go to Botswana, had to eliminate a lot of things, but I chose 3 things: Cape Town, the garden route, which goes around the ocean, and a safari in the Kruger National Park in a private lodge. And so there's 5 days in each. There's my 2 weeks there. And I did the same for the other countries. Country expert, eliminated the things I didn't want. I wanted a lot of hiking. I wanted a lot of nature. I didn't want cities and malls. And so I did exactly that. I went into nature, and it's amazing the stuff that I was able to get. I wanted to understand about suffering, because again, suffering is something that, happens to us in retirement. How can that help us? So I wanted to go to Robben Island to see how Mandela coped. 26 years incarcerated, and he went in there as a fiery attorney, activist, emerged as a humble leader. How did that transformation happen? And so I read his book, and I went to Robben Island to see, and I met one of the political prisoners there, had great conversations, tried to understand, what kind of life they led there. I went to Hiroshima in Japan to see how, that city, which was incinerated by the A-bomb, how it managed to resurrect itself and become a bustling city again. And so it was an incredible journey, adventure, but it was also an inventure. I had lots of time hiking on my own in beautiful places and just stopping and not just taking photographs and videos, but literally just looking at it and absorbing it. In Canada, it was the Rocky Mountains, those lakes and majestic mountains. And it was just breathtaking. I mean, I'm ready to die anytime having seen those things. It was so beautiful and so wonderful. And I'm engaged in each day doing what I want to do. So I would recommend to your audience here is think of taking a gap year, spend some time planning it, and try to find new ways of looking at your life, looking at how you see life, who you would want to be in this next stage of your life, and how you can help people, because that's the secret to obtaining joy in your own life.
Perfect. Let me pull up your contact information, George. So if you're looking to connect with George, you can follow him on his website or blog, and he's at georgejerjian.com. Again, his book is Dare to Discover Your Purpose. His email is listed on there, his phone number. You can connect with George on LinkedIn, on X, or on Facebook. And is that your Facebook group?
That's my Facebook title. Yeah, Retirement Rebellion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same on Instagram too.
Okay, perfect. So all of George's information is there. Make sure to read his book, connect with him, reach out to him if you have any questions. Thank you for joining us, everybody, today. We'll see you next time when we continue exploring retirement and longevity planning beyond the numbers.